Hello, welcome to the Books Crypto Club weekly catch-up on Zoom. It is Sunday, the 18th December 2022, and as is always the case with these sessions, we're going to be talking about whatever people want to talk about. Some weeks we talk about cryptocurrencies, blockchain, DeFi, NFTs, ICOs, STOs, whatever three-letter acronyms come into play, really. These sessions are open to novices and experts alike, so if you're new to this field of crypto and blockchain, and some of the terms sound quite difficult to understand or whatever, come along and join us and ask questions. If you're a more advanced person and you're running a project and you'd like to share details, then again, come and join us, talk about your project, talk about what it does and how it works. As I say, these sessions are run each week on a Sunday evening at 7 p.m. A link to join the event is below in the comments. Do come along, join in. So with that, let's see who's going to come and join us today. Sam, hello.
Hey, Gary. What's up?
Good. How's Turkey?
Going well. Going well. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Nice and warm weather by any chance?
It's yesterday was good. Today's a bit more chilly, but
yeah.
it changes. We're expecting snow.
Okay.
So maybe a white Christmas.
Hey, something to look forward to. That sounds good. Hey, Gaz, welcome back.
Hello.
Oh, Gaz has got his Christmas hat on.
Yes.
Hey. How's it going, Gaz?
All right. Yeah, not bad. You?
Yeah, no, not so bad. Sam and I were just saying how is talking about snow this Christmas, so we'll see if that comes off. And then over on the West Coast, where it's a little bit less likely, we've got Eric's joined us as well. Hey, Eric. How's LA?
I actually made it to the meeting this time.
Nice one. How's LA this morning?
It's of course we'll never see snow here, right? I mean, up in the tops of the mountains we get snow, but down where I live, it's maybe like 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So it's really perfect temperature in a way for me, right? It's like you're not it's not stifling hot all the time.
Yep, that's why I used to like it. I used to work in Central Valley, and it'd be really, really hot around Modesto and Sacramento, but you could go over to the mountains, you could go to Reno, Tahoe, and there'd be snow in the winter and that kind of thing. So yeah, a nice part of the world. So how you folks?
We've had 115 degrees here where I live, so it's reasonably hot.
I think that the worst I had was 108 one time when we had to sit outside for a meal. It was a Mexican meal and it was pretty warm, so it's good. So how's it going in the crypto world, folks? Anyone got anything interesting happening or any news? Or are we all still watching FTX and the latest revelations?
I just keep watching it.
News.
Yeah, there's certainly FTX. It seems the more they dig, the more seems to be coming out about an absence of control and management, shall we say? So we'll see from that. And we're joined by Elliot as well. Hey, Elliot. This is where Elliot's now scrabbling for the mute button. Maybe they'll find it later on. But yeah, Gaz, you were away for a couple of weeks. Are you back into the crypto scene again now?
Yeah, I've always been in it. I'm just watching it a minute. Really, what's happening? So, but there's a lot of FUD out there. So
yeah, it's one of those things as well that there is so much FUD going on. There is a risk of a contagion effect, and sometimes when people prophesize something, then it ends up happening. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So saw that the other week with likes of crypto.com and Binance, where there are all sorts of rumors sweeping around. And it's like, well, yeah, if you start believing the rumors, then the rumors will turn out to be true because it compounds on itself. So we'll see. Elliot, you managed to find your mute button yet? Elliot's just going to listen, I guess. So Eric, what's new with you? You were working on loads of stuff, I seem to remember, last time we were speaking.
Yeah, I've gotten involved in a rescue effort for Salt. Do you know that company?
I've heard of it, yeah.
They were a small competitor to Celsius. which of course is in big trouble. Salt always took a very conservative approach. They started at the same time. It was Celsius and Salt, but Celsius got big really quick. And really at the end of the day, it was because they were doing stuff that was just plain illegal. And Salt refused. Their compliance department was very, very careful. So they didn't grow as well, but they were very solid. And it turns out that they didn't have any exposure to FTX, but they had exposure to a Swiss bank called FalconX, which did have exposure to FTX. And FalconX is now in a state of disarray and has, in essence, defaulted on certain positions on Salt, and so now Salt is in trouble. So we're working to put together a rescue package where we're looking to replace the missing collateral. Because the problem with the missing collateral is the issue of loss of licensing in the United States, which is really where the big market is. And the regulators here already hate crypto. They're just inching for any kind of reason to do stuff. So we've got a number of strategies that Sean, the CEO, and a number of the key stakeholders have been discussing about how to go about this. You know, basically everyone in the group wants to see Salt succeed, right? They don't want it crashing and burning because it's really a key component in the ecosystem.
Okay.
It's important that we protect it, and we can do it to some extent by simply not pressing our rights against the company. But rather giving the company the time it needs to have the conversations and find a white knight.
So what is it that Salt does specifically?
They're DeFi. So you can give them Bitcoin, they'll hand you USDT, or the other way around, right? And charge an interest rate for it.
So they're doing what? Yield farming or?
No, I wouldn't go that far. So that's more complicated. This is straight out loan originations.
Okay.
Right. It's fully collateralized. Well, not fully collateralized. I think they were doing like 70 or 80% LTV, something of the sort. And then they just manage the margin calls.
Okay. Because I found it really interesting. I'm doing some work in the UK at the moment around collateralizing crypto for loans, but we're using slightly different legislation from what's been used before, which means it's kind of interesting that with most loan agreements, I'm philosophically against lending against crypto simply because, you know, the market's so volatile. There's a very high risk there, and I've seen situations where people lose their crypto and still have a loan to repay. So the project I'm involved in the UK at the moment is a non-recourse based loan. So effectively, it means if things go bad, then the person who has the loan just walks away from it. They lose the collateral, but they don't have an obligation to pay the remaining loan, which to me is much, much fairer because you're effectively putting your crypto, your Bitcoin up or whatever as collateral. And if it all goes wrong, you lose your crypto, say la vie, that's the nature of stuff. But you're under no obligation beyond that.
You don't have to do it all or none, right? The way that Salt and other DeFi providers do it is they issue a margin call and you can come up with more collateral. But if you don't, then they have a stabilization mechanism where they sell some of the collateral and they hold on to the resulting sovereign currency. Because that, you know, and the more that it dips, the more they do that. But there's still always some collateral, unless of course collateral went to zero.
Yeah.
Right. Then they just sell you on the way down, which I think makes a lot of sense, especially given the fact that if you're selling on the way down, you can at some point you can make the call and then buy it all back. Because it's getting cheaper and you're sitting on the cash, right? Now you're over collateralized. So this makes sense. Unfortunately for Salt, the the problem wasn't really volatility or the lack of management of it. It was a default by a counterparty, right? It was counterparty risk. And it was a bank, so they totally never expected that.
I think that's the thing, that the whole experience in the crypto market is shaking out so many things about assumptions and risk profiles and everything like that. It's really interesting to see how, when you dig behind the scenes, stuff that looks really rock solid and safe and everything is sometimes built on, as we know with FTX, a load of FTX capital, sorry, a load of FTX's balance sheet was FTT tokens. So it was effectively saying it was printing its own money. None
of this looks solid, right? If you actually look, and that's, I think the problem with FTX was that no one actually looked. It was the Bernie Madoff thing. Oh, my friend who knows this guy really well, he put it in and I put it in. I didn't even think about it, right? And the consequence of that is, I think we have yet to wrap our arms around the anger that this has generated in Washington, D.C. Because a lot of people within the political circles got burnt with FTX, and now they fucking hate crypto, right? Even all the ones that were, in support of it, they got their money in FTX. They were late. Finally, they're into crypto, right? And they're gonna make a fortune, and now they got nothing, and they're pissed.
I can't wait to see what else comes out. If there's anything else, like Kevin O'Leary, everything just seems a little bit too, I don't know, sus.
Yeah, agreed. That's probably the nicest way of putting it. But I think, Eric, as you say, that there are periods at which people suddenly, I've seen this several times, where you go through this kind of hype cycle where people go, no, I won't get into it. It's a bit risky. Oh, all right then. And it's just after the, oh, all right then, when they get into it, you hit the January 2018 moment where Bitcoin went from 20,000 to 8,000 or something. Or you hit the, what was it, a year later or so, when it was, Bitcoin hit $65,000, I think it was. And everyone goes, no. Oh, all right, then I'll get into it. And as soon as they get into it,
exactly.
it collapses.
I can't tell you how many people I was telling about 4,000, 8,000, right? 12,000. Buy, it's a great time. No, they didn't want anything to do with it. When it was 60,000, they were like, hey, can I buy some? Are you kidding me? Like, seriously? Now you want to buy? Okay, fine, sure. But, and then you tell them, but look, it's long term, right? You have to think 10 years. They're like, yeah. Then it crashes, and then they're pissed.
Yeah. But it's interesting, as you say, the regulators, because they're certainly in Washington, they're getting very interested. But it's curious as well, because when you look at FTX, the failure of FTX was nothing to do with crypto. The failure was around governance and management and control.
Yeah, exactly.
But it gets labels as a crypto thing. See, JT's joined as well. Hey, JT, not leaving you out. This is where we find JT's in some wonderful place in the world.
Hey guys.
How's it going?
Yeah, all good. I was just listening what the guy is saying, and my opinion is it's no different from traditional markets. It's the big money is always that pumps the markets, no doubt. Okay.
Yeah.
And then they just bring people with them. People then start to buy stocks, and the markets are better. People have more money. Where do I invest my money? And then they dump it. They dump everything, and then they buy low. Look. We know this very well. So the difference is there's more protection for the consumer on traditional markets. Some say, but it's a legal way for them to actually do what they do. They have loads of money, they pump the markets, and they're always the same people that dump them, the stocks at the top. It doesn't matter. You just look back and see who are the players in the stock market. It's always the same funds that exit first. Yeah.
After Black Scholes developed the options model, there were a flurry of other derivatives that were created. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s, right? And those markets remained what is it called, unregulated forever and ever, right? And everybody called. Every so often there would be a big blow up, tons of money lost. I mean, you'll remember LTC, was it long-term capital management?
LTCM,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, LTCM, and that bailout, and then the subsequent calls for regulation. Still, those markets did not get regulated. And the reason is because the really big guys that JC is talking about, they love the lack of regulation. And crypto is exactly that way, right? This is why the US hasn't really taken a very clear stance on this, and they're unlikely to, because everyone concerned wants it to be unregulated.
That's where it's going to be interesting to see how the Ripple case plays out, because that might be something that establishes precedence if it goes a certain way. And this is the thing, you may end up without regulation, but you will have legislation.
Well, you have case law, right? Which is a little different. So is the president, can you apply previous president to this new domain successfully? And then what happens is, once you've taken a legal position, then there is the potential for new legislation. Because the problem with new legislation is there's always the fight that ensues, and the constitutionality issues around it and all this kind of stuff, and so no one wants to touch it. After there has been some, a few rulings, then maybe the legislators will get a little bold and actually start regulating. But then there's a political fight, right? Whether anybody wants it regulated. And in the particular case of FTX, it was not by happenstance that it blew up, right? It was blown up. And it just basically got caught in the middle, in the crosshairs of two much bigger players that are going at each other. And it was on the wrong side of, things, so.
But it's certainly, again, we'll all look back on this as a fascinating story. And it kind of puts into context as well. You look at the size of it, and each time there's one of these things that appears, as you say, Celsius previously, or Three Arrows or whatever, the scale of it just gets bigger and bigger. But it's all still relatively tiny compared to traditional capital markets. You look at some of the stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely, it is tiny, but it is also clear at the high levels that though it's tiny, it has the potential to really change the power dynamics on the planet, right? And so it's now being taken seriously.
Well, I think that's where there's a realization that with crypto in its own isolated bubble is relatively harmless. But when you start connecting it with something like a stable coin that is pegged against a fiat currency, then it carries the risk of things overlapping, and that's where the mouse starts affecting the elephant, or whatever the phrase is. So yeah, I think you're right on that. JT, did we lose you for a minute? You back?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I joined from my desktop. Yeah, look, we've been through this before, right? I mean, it happens on every cycle. It's just the more people that then come to the next cycle, it just looks bigger, because there's more players, there's bigger players. Last year, Jump decided to come to crypto. Jump is the biggest market maker in the world in traditional markets, right?
Who's Jump? Sorry, Fernando.
Jump, the biggest market maker in traditional markets, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, those guys have almost unlimited liquidity. There's no such thing, I know, but you know what I mean, yeah? So...
Well, I think FTT token was unlimited liquidity, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, of course, there's going to be... I think the next cycle is going to be 10 times worse than this one, I have no doubt. But the problem here is that we have to get to the bottom who was behind FTX, okay? And this, I think, in my opinion, there's a lot of manipulation out there to try to avoid that, many different things has happened until now that points to that. So they even, people start to ask him more questions, because I mean, just think about it. These guys in 3 years, they couldn't have pulled this together. Alone. They have to have someone to do this together with them.
I completely agree, and of course we know that at least one part of it was the money laundering function that they served for all of the Ukraine aid, right? All of that money was coming back as donations to the Democratic Party. So
I don't want to get into that because the guy donated to both parties and he said it, equally.
Yeah, but
we're using dark whatever.
The Democratic Party.
Yeah, one was doing dark donations, and the other one is more official. So now they're trying to claw back the funds. Are they going to go first to the politicians and claw back all the money that the guy gave? I mean, do you understand? All of these questions, they're trying to move away by pushing the story to Binance. Yeah. Yeah, Binance, G's and CZ. I mean, you can start straight away. They tried first with the guy, go out to the media outlets and make him look like a nice guy. He didn't do it on purpose and, trying to change people's views, but it didn't work out because people spotted that straight away, So, I mean, there's a lot more. I don't know what it is. None of us, I think, in the call know, but surely they need to find out, they need to, if you follow the money, eventually you'll find it, it's basic 101 is follow the money,
There'll be a movie about this one day.
Yeah, there is. Oh, look, Amazon won the rights today, so Amazon and Netflix are today, it just came out the news to do a series on FTX and SBF. That's going to be phenomenal, I think. Well, I was contacted recently actually to do a movie, to be part of a movie that is going to be done. Well, it's documentary / movie. It's going to be done, I think, by Ridley Scott about crypto and all this type of thing. So there's a lot of stuff happening next year in terms of creating documentaries and movies.
I'm trying to remember who it is who got the initial rights. There's an author of a book who did The Big Short and that kind of thing. I've forgotten the guy's name, but he had spent time with Sam Bankman-Fried recently with the intention of writing a book. That must have been absolutely perfect timing.
True, actually.
So yeah, it's kind of fascinating. But yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it'll end up being a very interesting book. A very interesting film. I guess it'll be a bit like OneCoin as well. That OneCoin, as I understand it, that was turned into like a podcast on the BBC. So there was a series about the lost crypto queen and the OneCoin Ponzi scam. But I see that, was it this week that one of the people involved in it has pleaded guilty in the States? So the two main people, there was the woman who was known as Crypto Queen.
There was that woman, I can't remember never her name, and there was another guy. So they did it together. Yeah, the one.
They were operating out of Holland, if I remember.
Yeah, a lot of it was. Yeah. Because
I didn't know they were operating out of Holland. I never got into too much into that because I mean it was so bad stuff. I remember seeing them talking everywhere, spending money all over the place.
What was that, Sam?
Best scams come from my country. That's why I moved.
That's why I moved.
Now you are in Dubai, Sam, yeah?
No, Sam's you're in Turkey, Istanbul?
Yeah, it's Istanbul.
Turkey, okay.
I was born and raised in the Netherlands.
Escape.
Have you guys seen today what it came out? I already posted the link on some of the groups. The Trump NFT is a big scam.
Yeah.
Because they minted 30% of the supply of rare NFTs to their wallets first before they made it available to public. And then, I mean, there's so much stuff. 1,000 NFTs were minted first to their own wallets, the top ones with the most rarity, Yeah. So then what they've done is, I mean, this is insane. Somebody did already follow the smart contracts, the money, and then look at smart contracts. They have proxy upgradeability. I mean, it means that anytime they can put any code, they can change, they can shut down your NFTs, they can do anything they want. Basically, they can remove the NFTs from you. whenever they want, you know.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many things that these guys found, you know. If anybody attempted to do this project as an NFT project, man, everybody would just be dumping the NFTs because this is terrible. Yeah, this is really, really bad. So I don't know how it's going to go from now onwards, but I wouldn't buy any of this, to be honest. When you have a smart contract that can be basically remove anything you want, and the guys minted the first 1,000 NFTs to their own wallet, man, it's bad. You know?
Well, I think
you know that most new L1s have this capability, right?
Most what?
Most L1s, most new L1s, so not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, but most L1s have this capability.
Yeah, with NFTs is a bit different, right? I understand that, yeah.
Not different.
I was going to say, I thought the way that they do it is rather than you having a single smart contract,
you don't have,
you have two smart contracts and one calls the other.
Yeah, that's when you try to upgrade with because it's called upgradeable.
Yep.
This is what the new L1s are solving. But you can still do a lot of if you have malicious intent, you can do malicious things. So it's it's all, when it comes to a project, you have to look at like you have to do the due diligence, like who's this team, right? What are they doing? And there's like Trump NFTs thing. When I saw it, I just had to laugh. I would never buy it, right? Because I know it's just
but it's quite different. It's quite different because in Bitcoin and many of the chains out there, the L1s, you cannot do what you do on these smart contracts, because on these smart contracts means I can stop every single NFT that I want. Can take it away from you whenever I want. In Bitcoin and Ethereum and so on, you can't take my Bitcoin. You can't take my Ethereum.
That's what I said. Yeah? The newer L1s, and I said excluding.
No,
Bitcoin.
not newer. Okay, that's why I wouldn't put even a single cent on any new L1 being created like that, because to me, that is not decentralized. Somebody can take away your money, is not decentralization, you know? So I would stick rather with L1s that I know that are truly decentralized, where they can't enforce something on you. Yeah, it's your money. So it doesn't matter who they are, and I don't care if it's a VC chain or not. Like, I don't know, I didn't look very much into Aptos and Sui, but I know the Aptos, there's quite a few things in Aptos that people are saying is not going to work. Yeah, consensus mechanism. There's a lot of chat.
Yeah, because of
background
move.
chat, you know.
Because of move, but you can be guaranteed if someone wants to do malicious things with move, you can totally do it.
Yeah, that's why I don't like it. You know, that's why I prefer anything Rust. You know,
but that's your personal preference, right? So that's totally fine. I'm for example, because it depends on if you take a look at NFT, right? And I make games, and I like usability, I like utility, and this is especially nice in GameFi. And there are some really hard limitations if you take a look at the Bitcoin family, not specifically Bitcoin, but for example, the derivatives that makes use of the same consensus, for example, uses op return to make certain I would say certain mechanisms possible to achieve the same. It is very hard on Ethereum and on Bitcoin, not because they're outdated, but because the demands that, for example, game development needs. This is where Aptos, for example, I think definitely has the innovation in place. And these are all new technologies. So I think sometimes in crypto we tend to forget how new this technology is. Blockchain, when it took Bitcoin quite a while to get where it is now, right? And it's still maturing. If you take a look at Ethereum is still like the highest echelon of NFT, right? Because that is the most mature virtual machine. but it is really lacking in capabilities that everyone wants to see, especially if you're going to move to metaverse, for example. And my point is actually, if someone wants to do something malicious, they can do it. They can do it on Ethereum because I've seen plenty of that stuff. You can even do it on even on Bitcoin level, right? Possible. If someone wants to do something malicious, they will do something malicious. And I think it's a whole thing. It's like you take the technology, you take the team, you look like who's behind it. For example, the case that Eric was describing, right? That the project can be completely honorable, in have the highest integrity, but still can be fucked by integrity. By proxy, right? So these things happen, and that's
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. The only thing I disagree with you is that I'm a cybersecurity guy. Okay, so everything is possible in my mind. Yeah, always. Yeah, but the what you have to do always when it doesn't matter what you create. Yeah, you need to look from a security perspective. Yeah, and what you don't want is to make it easier for anyone. How do you avoid all of those things? You have to make it as decentralized as possible, as safe as possible. Because in Bitcoin, for example, if you're going to try to attack the network, yeah, good luck. Yeah, you know, and nobody has managed so far to be able to do any rollback. Yeah, somebody has capability, maybe, but we don't know. Yeah, so what my point is, you have to actually think about, do I make it easier for users out there? Do I make it safe for users out there? You're not like let's do it because at some point somebody, if they really want, they're gonna hack it. No, we can't think like that. What we need to think is decentralization solves a lot of these problems. So nobody owns the code, nobody owns the smart contract. There's people contribute to the code. And when you start to roll out a new version of Bitcoin, it's going to be people going to roll out to their own nodes. The same with Ethereum, the same almost with every chain. Is the people who run the nodes. That's why we always talk, Gary, you know, it's about decentralization. Who actually owns the nodes? Like in Solana, there was 3 institutions that owned the nodes. I completely got out of Solana, you know, as soon as I found out who were people running the nodes, you know. So this is the key point. How decentralized is the chain to avoid exactly what you said, Sam? Yeah. If it's decentralized, there's not 1 or 2 people controlling it.
I completely agree. But it's like what we're talking about is like what I was actually mentioning is like the maliciousness, right? And I've worked with a lot of people in the I'm not that old, but in the last, let's say, last 5 to 8 years, I have worked with like a lot of variety of people on deep technical level, and I have seen maliciousness on different aspects. For example, like full decentralization, right? I'm not gonna because I know Gary's recording everything, and I don't want to get fucked. Like, but I have seen so many things, observed so many things, and for example, you can have like a completely decentralized network or a project, but even then there can be things that are managed in a certain way that can be malicious, that can eventually screw up everyone, and these kind of long cons have been around.
Well, I was going to say the other thing as well is that people think of it in terms of the integrity of the nodes and the network. But actually, there's a completely different area, which is far more vulnerable, which is the on-ramps and the off-ramps. So you look at most attacks that are taking place these days, the attacks aren't on the core blockchain. They aren't, you know, directly on. They're on the interoperability layer.
Peripherals, you know, like bridges.
But that's because Gary, but the focus on bridges, for example, right? Everyone is like, oh, bridges are evil and blah 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 blah.
They are, because that's money. It's the same thing as you have a table, yeah, and you put the money there, and you just close the door and you wait for somebody to go and grab the money's there for grabs. Yeah, and that's why it's dangerous. I keep telling people, close the bloody bridges, find a different way, you know, and they don't listen, man.
Let me finish this one.
Yeah, sorry,
right?
sorry.
So the thing is with bridges are extremely vulnerable because when they're audited, I actually know parties that perform the audits, and currently there are the audits that they are doing these days are way better than before, but they're not perfect, and the audit can only get this far. And you have to understand that that when a bridge gets hacked, it's everyone that gets into a panic because everything gets locked down, transactions are like stopping, right? And it's like millions that's suddenly are suddenly gone. But I have seen core vulnerabilities that are far worse than this. I have seen hacks that like drained complete communities out of funds in years, not in days or in seconds, or like a big showstopper. Oh, we have been hacked, but like for years. And one very specific one that was basically a hack that wasn't registered because there weren't watch monitors back then. But I have seen this, and there are so many aspects on security, and the ones that we read about is
Tell me about it.
the ones that we read about, for example, FTX, and I totally agree, but I don't really like I like discussions based on facts, right? The whole FTX story, it is worse than dog shit. It is worse than dog shit, and it has it all.
I agree. People are gonna be so surprised, man, when
they're not
this
going to
thing
be
starts.
surprised. They're not going to be surprised. The thing is,
Yeah, we won't, but a lot of people. We won't, but I think a lot of people will, because a lot of people think the guy was just a guy doing bad stuff, you know. But I think there's a lot behind that.
No. I'm like 3 hours away from Dubai, right? I see the same people in the same scenes all the time. I see exactly who's sitting with the kind of people, you know, just like the group that CC is hanging out with. That's a cool group, right? But there are less cooler groups, and you always see the same people with the same money that you will never see on LinkedIn, right? It's just, yeah.
Well, this is the great thing about blockchain. It's all transparency, they say.
Well, you know, the thing is, Bitcoin accomplished one thing. It was a small thing, but it was a big thing. And it accomplished it in a way that is undefeatable, right? Which is to say, it managed to secure a transaction. Okay, great. But that's not nearly enough functionality for us to move forward as a world. So all of the stuff on top remains really largely unsecured and vulnerable to the corruption of humanity. This is the problem that we have to solve, right? Is how do we create better, more secure systems where we remove the human discretion aspect? And I think, you know, I think that the idea of being able to query a smart contract and decompile it into code for an examination is a good first step. The fact that no one does that no one knows how to do that there isn't the expertise enough to do that on a more consistent basis and to discover the holes is another issue. But the other big issue is the keys to the smart contract. Right. Yeah. So at least on Ethereum, you have immutability. So you know that if you're doing business with this contract, that will never change. You took the time to audit it. You know exactly what it does. You can trust it. Okay, all good. And if they want to create a new one, okay, well, that's a new one. Now you have to do it all over again, right? But in some of the platforms where you now have mutability over the business logic, it gets a lot trickier, right? Because you have to wonder, you know, even if you have people who basically built the logic well and with the right intentions and everything, the fact remains that they continue to have access to the business logic, and that anyone can come and tap on their shoulder and say, listen, you are going to do the following, right? And they don't want to do it, but there's a gun at their heads. And that's really what it comes down to, is that all of the leadership of the crypto space has all been compromised into cooperation agreements with not just governments, right? Like other shadowy institutions that that have nefarious purposes and want to control it, and they just can't, right? Bitcoin remains the one thing that they can't control because the functionality is so low level. What you would have to compromise is the transaction, and then you have to overcome the 51% attack problem, and you just can't do that. And so, okay, fine. That's why so much interest in the rest of the crypto space, right? And that's also why, what's his name? Taylor from MicroStrategy keeps saying, Bitcoin is not crypto, right? Bitcoin is secure. Bitcoin is secure. Crypto, who knows?
Yeah, I think Michael Saylor, who's the guy from MicroStrategy, as you say, it's very interesting because he keeps talking about this being a long game as well. And he's describing Bitcoin as a mechanism to hedge against fiat. So clearly he's certainly got a vision there. But yeah, I think the thing that people keep forgetting, and it's been alluded to here as well, is that the market, crypto, Bitcoin, whatever, is still relatively young. You know, I mean, Bitcoin came out, what was it, 2009? So that's 13, 14 years. In traditional, timescales, that's hardly anything. Ethereum smart contracts only got implemented 2016, I think it was. So that's been around for 6 years. So that's still relatively immature compared to other things. But that's what I find fascinating.
But it is world changing. It is world changing because almost every country now is on their own digital currency, right?
Well,
I call it digital currency because it's not crypto, but it's close to it. And there's like new there's not, I'm not going to talk about regulation, but you mentioned a good word, legislation, right? There's a lot of things changing, and some are definitely not good. But there are some that are very good and the ones that are good are for the protection of people.
And this is where again, I'm always arguing in favor of appropriate regulation, where it's proportionate and where it's designed to protect the consumer.
Yeah, the EU means exactly that, Gary. I think, Micah, if you look at it makes sure that exchanges are regulated. It separates the custodian part of it, and they need to be audit separate company that is one of the companies that is on a list of companies authorized to do that, blah, blah, blah. So stable coins are properly regulated there. I mean, there's a lot of, I don't think people understand how good it is, the legislation that the EU came forward.
But that's the legislation, right? But let's take one news from this week. From the country of scams, Holland. They made I think I read it on Watch Guru, that KuCoin was like not legally operating from the Netherlands, because you have some sort of kind of restrictions and so on, right? So the legislation has been there for what, since at least 10 years.
No,
right?
no, I'm talking about the new Micah. Yeah, it's the new regulations that come.
Yes, but
the new legislation coming out.
The execution of it, right? Like someone has to act on it, right? And if, for example, KuCoin, if you're talking about protection of the big exchanges, right? It gets into the news, and the only thing that gets done with it is that they are eventually fined, right, by the European Council.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. But we need this legislation to be agreed and approved in the European Union. It's gone out for countries to look at it. Yeah, I think almost everyone agrees, but I think there's a much, much bigger thing going on at the moment. And I don't think an FTX was just and everything that has happened to crypto, it was just a coincidence, so I'm afraid.
Oh yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
There's a lot of things that point that this was a coordinated effort, So I'm not sure if the legislation is going to be approved or not in the European Union, but I hope it will, because that will drive forward everything, you know. If they don't do it, for sure Dubai is going to do it in the next 6 months, and then it will be a massive exit. And I don't think Europe wants to have this massive exit of talent, of companies, and so on, because people just go wherever there is legislation, you know. And this is what I'm afraid of. Is just there's a lot of manipulation out there. And you mentioned XRP, Gary.
Yeah.
Do you believe even for a second, yeah, that they're going to allow XRP to become, you know, a for them to win the court action? They're gonna make sure. I mean, I don't see how they could, with everything that is going on, how they're gonna make sure that yes, this is not a security. You know, it's impossible. You know, they will make sure it will be regarded as a security.
I think I still think that there's a potential thing that what they'll actually do is they'll reach an out of court settlement. So it means that that won't then create case law from which you've got precedents, and it allows them to kick it down the road a bit more. And
I agree.
I think Ripple will end up being issued a nominal fine in some way, which will be so obviously cheaper than them continuing to fight the battle.
But you're missing the point here. They want to make it case law, and that they will become a security, and that means therefore, you know, every token will be a security. They want to make it a case law.
I think again, neither of us know the future.
Of
but
course.
my suspicion is that that's exactly what they don't want to do. One of the problems with establishing case law and precedents is that you've then got something clear and unambiguous.
Yeah.
Every token is a security. How good is that for traditional finance?
Yeah, but
for governments?
But what it still means is that you could then still get companies still going up against the court system on that. Now, I think that if it's clearly defined on that, I think that's going to be mayhem. And I think in some ways, this is what I found in the past with regulators and with lawyers, they actually prefer ambiguity because it gives them the flexibility to operate. So this is where it's interesting you're talking about MiCA. So for anyone who's listening at the moment, MiCA is the upcoming EU regulation around markets in crypto assets. And it's got a whole load of stuff about how you track, trace, secure assets and that kind of thing. The UK is coming up with what's almost like a mini MiCA. It's kind of like MiCA simplified. But you can see how the regulators are already playing a bit of what are described as regulatory arbitrage. So, you know, people say, what's the role of a regulator? I would say it's three things. One, it's to protect the consumer. Two, it's to prevent systemic failure of your financial system. Three, and this is only just beginning to come out now, is to provide a regulatory friendly environment that attracts investments in companies. And that's where in the UK, for those who don't know, there's a new act of Parliament, or about to be enacted. It's just going through the final stages. The Finance Services Markets Bill, I think it's called at the moment, which includes in it a secondary objective of the FCA, who's the UK regulator, of providing, I've forgotten the exact words, but it's effectively to be competitive. And I've never seen before regulation to instruct the regulator to be competitive in some way. So that's all going through now. And the chairman of the FCA, or the outgoing chairman, actually announced a few weeks ago at a meeting that he acknowledged and accepted what it was, the principle that they now need to be regulatory competitive. So this is where I think, as JT and Sam were alluding, like Dubai could steal a march on this in terms of being the world's leading favorable regulator of crypto.
But it's already leading.
Yeah.
It's true, Sam, it's true.
But it's already leading. It's
well,
like,
so let's just sort of take the higher view. Right, let's just take the higher view and say that the world continues to be composed of a series of separate PowerPoints where no matter what set of regulations one regulator issues, you're not by any means guaranteed that any other regulator will follow suit. And so what really just means is that someone can clamp down and there's just an exodus to a different jurisdiction where you can do what you want to do, right? And they just keep kicking the, I mean, look at how long the European Union tried to do tax harmonization, right? Even within just the European Union, super, super difficult to do, because the bottom line is that whenever you're talking about money and money flowing, the first question is how much of it is going to flow to me, right? And that's where you either have one central group of people who are making all the decisions, and therefore the answer to that question is clear, all the money flows to them, or you have multipolarity, in which case the answer isn't clear, and we have a multipolar world, right? So to a large extent, whether the, you know, this or that regulator is passing this or that rule, it's really pointless, because you know, half the time you can't even enforce this stuff anyway, right? And law without enforcement isn't law at all. It's on the books, okay? And so what? So I have, my perspective is that there's human law and there's natural law. Natural law is inescapable. There's a force of gravity on my body that leaves me stuck to the ground, and that's just that. There's no arguing about that, right? Human law doesn't work that way. You can actually break the law, right? And therefore you have to have a component of enforcement, and a component of surveillance, and a component of judgment, and a component of jurisprudence, and all of these things anywhere along the line of which you can have a failure, and corruption is endemic to all of it. And therefore, there really isn't any point in passing law. What we need to do, I mean, I'm with you, Gary, that we need regulation, but not regulation in the courts. We need regulation in the blockchain, because blockchain is natural law. I cannot do what the protocol won't allow, period, right? And so we just need to figure out how to build systems that are ruled by code, not by courts and discretion and politics and corruption.
I think that's the thing I really liked about the DAO project. So for
yeah,
some of you,
I love DAOs.
The DAO, I thought, was a wonderful experiment which disproved two things. But first of all, it disproved the argument that code is law, because what happened was, because there was a feature in the code that operated in a certain way, which meant some people lost a load of money, then all of a sudden code is law doesn't apply if it's me losing my money. So it was a great experiment to disprove that.
Well, the blockchain actually forked over that issue, right?
Yeah.
Because there were those who said code should be law, and if you lost the money because there was a bug, then you should lose the money. But everybody else seems to disagree, and that's the problem. Is that so you now have a chain like Bitcoin, for example, and Ethereum Classic that are immutable because of the participants, but the participants can always leave.
Yeah, so that links in wonderfully with what was my second point on the DAO, because again, I think it was an experiment, and the thing with experiments is sometimes an experiment failing is every bit as powerful as it succeeding. And the one thing was it proved that code is not law, because you get bugs in that. But the other thing was it also disproved the concept of decentralized governance, because of the very fact that, as you say, some people voted in favor of a change, some people voted against it. And the way that actually went was quite a centralized decision seemed to be reached on what the going forward was on that. So I think it's fascinating. Again, it comes back to the whole thing about we're in an experimental phase, and some experiments will succeed, some will fail. And with some of them, there'll be an outcome that you didn't expect that you go, oh, that's interesting. What can we do with that?
Look, the worst experiment for me is that they are using our technology, the technologies we are creating in blockchain and in crypto, against us now, So all the CBDCs, you and I spoke many times about that. And I told you a while back when I gave my first talk in a conference 2017 or 18, I can't remember, about CBDCs and what they were going to do. Everybody thought I was crazy. And you've seen the announcements even this week. It's there. and they're going to use against us, you know. So they control everyone. They just give you, I mean, you don't even have, now I heard another one that it was like, they're going to push, I think it was in Holland, some, if I'm not mistaken, the same, like the Swedish, their implant of their
microchip.
The identity, you know, on your thumb, I think, you know, they do it in Sweden, and that has your identifier, you know, that's your hash key identifier on the chain, you know, and then you use that to buy anything you want, you know, on transports, go everywhere. That's your credit card, basically, you know.
The mark of the beast, right?
Yeah. But there's an even further thing on that. I appeared on a TV program a couple of months ago about this, which
implants, yeah.
Well, no, you don't even need NFC chips. You use facial recognition software to determine your identity, and I know in some ways that's not at the level it needs to be yet. But
it takes 20 milliseconds with your face in front of any camera, even this.
Yeah,
20 milliseconds.
In Dubai, when you arrived, they were trying. I think they've stopped trying. I can't remember. They still continue. The nationals, you know, could arrive without showing passport. Just go, just walk through, you know, and that's it.
Yeah, I actually have it in my building. If I take the elevator, I don't have to press a key. I just walk in front of the camera, and it recognizes my face immediately and goes up. But I'm in a new part of Istanbul. I even have like a speedy market where you have like a Jetsons robot that brings you groceries.
Wow,
that's cool, actually. But yes, Gary, sorry, I interrupt you.
No, but I think you're all right, and it shows how this technology is evolving at pace. And the thing I find fascinating is it's not necessarily one technology. It's the intersection of multiple technologies coming together that could provide us with some amazing capabilities. But if used maliciously or malevolently or whatever, I was describing it on a WhatsApp group I'm in the other day. It's like aviation with airplanes. You know, airplanes can be used to travel thousands of miles and take cargo all over the place. Amazing invention, but they can also be used to drop bombs on people. And it really depends upon how you're using the technology.
Yeah, that's CBDCs are great. I really like them, but the only thing that it should be banned by every country is programmable money, because that is what is going to put, I don't know, how much money you can have, you know, expiring just the money for one person, you know, all these type of things are bad. Programmable money should be removed from CBDCs. And then, yes, I mean,
yeah, too bad. It's too late. Sorry.
I know, mate. I know, Sam. But
I'm sorry. Too late.
People can still, because it hasn't been. It's not out there yet in the majority of Western countries, so people can still change that. Start to ask questions to your MP, you know, to your senator or whatever. You know, people have to move, because otherwise, you know, I had a discussion in a group not related to crypto, where people say, yeah, what's the point? And I said, you can't say that, because, you know, imagine if the French, when they did the French Revolution, thought like that. Yeah, what's the point? What's the point? Nothing would have changed, you know, in the world. So people have to, when things are not right, people have to think about how they can make it right. You know, you can't keep leaving these guys. The reason why, like Putin or not, okay, the reason why Putin is there is because people in Russia, they always said over the years, who else could go there? Yeah. And the same thing started to go about Boris Johnson. Do you remember, Gary? Oh, who else could be there? You can't. If something is wrong, something is bad, we have to do something about it. You know, you can't think like that. Otherwise, you know, yeah, too late, Sam. That's why people then say too late. It's because you just don't go and do something about it.
Technically,
I wanna go back for a minute to the DAO issue, because I think it connects to what JT is talking about in a different way. In the DAO, we had a split in the road where each individual had to make a decision about whether they were going to support the old Ethereum Classic or the new Ethereum, right? Which essentially violated the principle of Ethereum and immutability. So it was a case of principle versus convenience, and clearly the economic incentive was to support the new ecosystem at the expense of the principle.
Mm-hmm.
So because those of us who lost the money, we didn't want to lose the money, so we had to agree that the right thing to do was to break immutability, and in doing so we essentially destroyed the system, because if you have a system that is not immutable, then it isn't worth anything, right? I mean, Bitcoin is worth something because it is immutable. And this leads to the bigger problem, which is that democracies don't work in a situation where the people are ill-informed or unprincipled. If you have a population that doesn't understand what's happening or doesn't care about principles, then you might as well not bother with the democracy. You go right back to a monarchy or an oligarchy, where the people who actually run things can just tell you this or that, and then you'll do what they want you to do, and then there you are, you're fucked. And that's where we are now, right? People arguing about CBDCs is simply absurd. There shouldn't even be an argument, but nobody understands. Nobody even cares.
I guess that closes it off quite nicely, really, because I'm conscious that we're out of time. But ultimately, the technology is great. It's the people who are operating it in some way that are the problem. So exactly as Eric was describing, really, in some ways we need the governance, we need the laws and that built into the code, so it just executes and we don't have these issues. Because if we let humans get involved, they always mess it up in some way through self-interest. Yeah. Folks, a really fascinating end to the conversation. Really enjoyed that. Thanks everyone for the contribution, and thanks for those who are listening in as well. It is Christmas Day next Sunday, which doesn't bother me in the slightest, but most people, I guess, will be doing other things. So we'll probably have a break, and with Gaz shaking his head, showing his hat and that. So we won't have a call next Sunday, but for anyone who is interested, we hold these every other Sunday normally at 7 p.m. So have a great break. Be safe, wash your hands, hodl, do whatever you enjoy. Thanks for your contribution, and see you all in the new year.